Hello one and all, Jasper here, and like many of you watching this video, I enjoy playing video games, and I enjoy Game of Thrones. However, sadly, there are no good Game of Thrones games. At best we have meh. So follow me to a land of fantasy, where George R.R. Martin not only gives me the right to direct a game set in his famous books, but also throws a few mil at me to get it done. What would I do? Game of Thrones has the potential to fit into many different genres of gaming, but for me, the one I want the most is a strategy game. So now listen closely as I describe what my idea is and trust my editor to make it look good. You just finished downloading the game and you launch it. You're then greeted by the title screen for the game, and it's called Game of Thrones: A Storm of Swords. I wanted to just go with A Storm of Swords, but that would just kill marketing for no good reason. You, of course, select a new game, and you are greeted by 10 sigils. The Starks, the Arryns, the Lannisters, the Greyjoys, the Tyrells, the Martells, Baratheons of King's Landing, Baratheons of Dragonstone, Baratheon of Storm's End, and of course, the greatest of all these houses, the Tullys, making a total of 10 factions you can play as. Now, I would love to make every single of these factions super unique and original, however, I'm not going to, for two reasons. First, I want to limit myself. Anyone can just spout a bunch of bullshit that sounds really cool, but in reality is almost impossible to actually implement. I want my game to at least be possible to make and be financially successful. Second, it wouldn't be very lore accurate. Think about it. Culture-wise, what's the difference between someone from the Westerlands and the Reach? Very little. So the difference in army composition won't be that drastic. Really, it's more like there are 4 factions based on culture. The Rhoynar, which will be Dorne, the First Men, which will be the North, the Ironborn, which will be the Greyjoys, and the Andals, which will be everyone else. This aspect will decide what kind of army you will have. This isn't to say there is no difference between the Andal factions, but most of these will be numbers based. The Lannisters will have the highest income and start with the most gold, the Tyrells will have the highest population and food supply, and the Tullys will be shit. Now I want to dive into the factions and armies a bit and give a vague example of how I see them playing, but first let me give you an idea of what kind of strategy game this is. Total War mixed with Hearts of Iron 4. I'm going to have to explain what those are in case you haven't played either of them, huh? I mean, I'm confident all of you know Total War, but Hearts of Iron might be a stretch. Let's go everything you need to know no matter what faction you pick. And as an example, let's pick House Arryn. On screen you would see a map of the Vale, and at the top of the screen will be your resources. These resources are gold, supplies, and manpower. Of these 3, gold is the most important as it will be used for almost everything. Upgrading buildings, making new castles, recruiting units, upgrading units, and all that good stuff. Even as the Lannisters, you can never have too much gold. Supplies are for food. This makes sure your armies are being fed when marching off to war and that your own castles are properly supplied so that they can't be starved out during a siege. Finally, manpower, which is pretty much all the able-bodied men you will have to send to war. Even if you have the gold to buy all the weapons and armor, it's pointless if you don't have the men to put them on. Now, click on that button on the left side at the top of the screen. It's shaped like a tree. Well, a werewood tree. Yeah. And once you click on it, you see a focus tree. Now, a focus tree is pretty much what you plan to do with all sorts of branches. One branch would be lore-friendly, and the other would be alternatives. So, if you're playing as the Arryns, the lore-friendly path would be to sit on your ass and do fuck all. However, we have other options. A path that encourages you to side with Robb Stark in his war and fight against the Lannisters. Maybe you're feeling quite dickish though, and instead choose to join the Lannisters and fight against the Tullys and Starks despite your relation to them. All the factions will have something akin to this. The Greyjoys can agree to Robb Stark's alliance instead of attacking him, Renly and Stannis can work out their disagreement with one another instead of trying to kill each other, and Robb Stark, instead of wifing up a Westerland whore, he could stick to his promise and wed the Frey daughter. And just like that, no red wedding. It's not just political stuff though, there are also options you can focus on to boost your faction, such as investing in smiths to decrease the price of units, learning more about farming so you have more supplies for your troops, etc, etc. This will be done in the map mode. However, let's be honest, the real fun will be the battles, which I would like to rip entirely from the Total War franchise. Those guys are the kings of large battles, and it's easy to see why. Having as many as 10,000 men fighting one another in a single battle, I can't think of a system that would fit the franchise any better. Now, with the general gameplay setup, how about we dive into the different factions and how they would play differently from one another? First up, the Ironborn, who I imagine will have some of the best infantry in the game to make up for the fact they have no cavalry at all, and being a faction that has little to no horses in their armies, cannot march as far as other factions, and their supply when in enemy territory is limited. However, we offset this by giving the Ironborn a bonus to speed when in boats, as well as getting more loot after battles, and to top it all off, being more efficient at raiding. So far, they sound really good, right? Well, let's knock them down a peg by giving them a rampage mechanic. Since the Ironborn lack discipline, it's likely that in battle they will ignore your orders, instead charging at the nearest enemy or refusing to fall back. This is somewhat mitigated when you get to the higher tier units though. One final bonus though, that they are able to recruit a higher percentage of their population due to their more militaristic culture. However, due to the Iron Islands having such a small population, you're going to want to expand and conquer to reap the full benefits of this ability. Next up is the North, who I imagine would play in a similar manner to the Ironborn, being mostly a faction focused on infantry. The difference being they will have access to horses, but sea travel will not be that great due to their lack of a navy. They ignore snow debuff, so if an enemy faction was to invade their lands, it'll be easier for them to gather their strength and fight them off. Now, given the history and lore of Dorne, I see them as a very mobile faction, great for laying ambushes and being faster than the other factions due to their armies more often wearing less armor. I can see skirmish units working very well with them, with some units having a poison debuff that they apply when fighting the enemy, along with not suffering supply shortages when in a desert, something other factions would struggle with. Finally, the Andals, aka all the other kingdoms. I see them model-wise looking very similar but with a color and number changes, so that way they feel very different. For example, House Baratheon would be another infantry-focused faction, however House Arryn would have the best heavy cavalry in the game. House Tyrell would be able to produce the most supplies of any other faction, and House Lannister would not only start with the most gold, but also be able to produce the most. I could go for hours about all the little details and changes that could be tweaked, but I think you get the picture. Now, some of you might be thinking, yeah Jazz, this is all good, but there's nothing that special about the game. It's just Total War with different currency setup. And you are right. So let me drop the big changes on you right now. The vassals. I don't know about the rest of you, but when I play any Total War games, I never bother with vassals. It's usually better for me to just take the land for myself instead of letting these bastards inevitably stab me in the back. However, in this game, you will have to have vassals. In fact, every time you take a province, you will have to put someone in charge of it, and they will hold on to it and defend it. You still have access to it, choosing what buildings to construct along with recruiting units. In fact, it'll be even cheaper to upgrade these buildings because the person you put in charge of the land will help you cover some of the cost. But the person you gave to it will be the direct owner of it, and they will stay loyal to you. Maybe. You see, all of your vassals and generals will have a loyalty meter. It can go up and down depending on your decisions. Do you just make them the lord of a province? Well, that's a good boost to loyalty right there. However, if instead of making them a general, you choose to make a random sellsword or hedge knight in charge of your armies, well, they won't like that. Even less if they have a grudge against the character or family. Good luck trying to keep the Blackwoods and Brackens loyal. If you reward one, it will just piss off the other. If this loyalty meter is high, you can expect them to be willing to commit more troops to a war effort, pay their taxes, and fight to the bitter end to keep you safe. If the loyalty is low, it'll be more expensive to use their units, and you are at a higher risk of them choosing to be neutral in wars or deciding to side with the enemy. Now, you might be thinking if you have a lord who's pretty treacherous and disloyal, then why not just put him in an army and send him off to die? Well, it isn't that simple. For starters, if their loyalty is low, they might just refuse to lead any armies if they think it's too small, forcing you to commit more troops to try and kill them. Now, let's say you do that anyways and they end up dead. Well, now their son inherits, and not only does he probably share a lot of opinions with his father, but he is kind of pissed that your orders resulted in the death of his father. So now you're just in an even worse situation. Also, these factions are pretty much mini-factions who will be playing a very similar game to you. Every once in a while, the Karstarks might go to war with the Boltons to claim their land, same as any other faction under your control, no matter who you are. These can sometimes be good. If a loyal faction takes the land of a disloyal faction, then you don't have to worry about it. But even a loyal faction can be scary if it gets too powerful. Eventually, they might decide that they should be Lord Paramount instead of you. Suddenly, you have a rebellion on your hands, and if such a war breaks out, all your other vassals will have a chance to support them or you. Good luck if that takes place. I have to say, I don't mean to toot my own horn here, but I really like my idea so far, especially the vassal system. I'm pretty proud of that. I just wish you could play as the vassals. Oh wait, this is a fantasy land, so of course you can. That's right. If you want to, you can play as the High Lords of Westeros, such as the Umbers, the Danes, and the Tarleys, who will have their own focus tree that can go down several routes, though there will be some similarities between all of them. A loyal path, a betrayal path, with some other middle options sprinkled in. Yet the reason you're going to want to play as a High Lord is because of how it flips the loyalty system. You see, you can control how much loyalty you have by making decisions in events, and while as a Lord Paramount, you want to keep it high and in the green, as a vassal though, you want to make it low. Why? Well, remember what I said. If you're loyal, it means you are willing to pay your taxes and send men to support your liege lord. That is money and men that you could use to further your own goals. But be careful, while being disloyal has those perks, it comes with some issues. For example, your liege lord is more likely to intervene if you try to expand your territory, and loyal vassals are more likely to try and expand into your territory, as a liege is far less likely to take issue with a loyal vassal taking over a disloyal vassal. The smaller factions will be very similar to the parent faction, with few changes to stats, though there are exceptions, such as the Blackwoods, who are first a men faction that serve under an Andal lord. It's a shame you can't have more interesting situations like that though. Wouldn't it be cool if there was a first man house in Dorne that followed the old gods, or an Ironborn Reaver who protected the Reach from pirates? Oh yeah, you know exactly where this is going, don't you? Because there is one more button you can click on, and it's an icon that has a banner with a question mark on it. When you click on it, you're brought to a special screen where you can make your own faction, and not just the faction, but lords as well. Customize your character with different pieces of armor, weapons, traits, and features, while doing the same to your army as well. Feel like what Dorne needs to claim victory is just one vassal with tough infantry? We'll pick the Ironborn culture, replace House Yornwood, and throw all your points into your infantry. Bam! Now you have the toughest fighters in Dorne. And guess what? You don't need to pick Ironborn if you want the tough infantry. It's just that culture's naturally boosts infantry. You can still be Dornish and focus your points into your infantry, making even the toughest northern infantry line hesitate to take you on. Now, you might be wondering, how deep does this customization go? There are no limits. You can make the head of your house a black woman with golden hair and purple eyes with an army that fights in the nude. The sky is the limit. Go crazy and come up with your own amazing story and lore, because the focus tree ain't going to do that shit for you. Yeah, sadly, the focus tree is going to be very basic compared to many of the other houses, missing a lot of the flair and character to it, so you're going to have to use your imagination to add that yourself. Sorry, but even in this fairy tale world, I have my limits, and having a customizable focus tree where you can pick and decide what happens seems a little bit much. Okay, I think I did a good job going over everything and explaining myself well. I'm sure there are some issues with my ideas and how they couldn't be that compatible, but I bet those kinks can be ironed out with a little bit of elbow grease, and I still have a little bit of time to talk. So, how about some DLC? What a world we live in. I remember back in my day, DLC was treated like a racial slur. Everyone hated it and nobody ever wanted to talk about it. But now it seems like all sorts of people are practically begging for their games to have some. Am I right, Elden Ring fans? So why not churn out a few ideas that I think make some great high-quality DLC? Now, you might have noticed that there is a culture that is missing. We have the Andals, the Rhoynar, the First Men, and the Ironborn, but a clear culture is missing. Well, we solved that with the first DLC, Valyrian Invasion. Not only does this DLC add the Valyrian culture into the game, but also two massive factions, Daenerys Targaryen and Aegon Targaryen. No, not that Aegon. No. God damn it, Sam. This is why I keep telling you to watch the show and read the books. Is that too much to ask for you to invest 140 hours? Damn it. Young Griff. Thank you. Now, obviously, this comes with new armor pieces you can use to customize your own faction, such as an Unsullied and Golden Company armor, but it will introduce dragons as a playable unit that will just murder everything. You will need to invest in some powerful baristas if you... Fucking hell, baristas. Are they gonna just throw their smoking hot lattes at the beast? You're going to need some powerful ballistas if you want a chance at killing those overgrown iguanas. And of course, the culture of Valyrians. Now, what does this culture add? I don't know. I'll put some more thought into it when George R. R. Martin gives me a pile of money. Now, you might be a little worried about getting this DLC. What if you're worried you won't like the Valerian culture? Well, you can test it out because on the same day, some free LC will come out, turning the Valarians and Celtigers into their own unique factions with the Valerian culture. So you can play as them and give it a bit of a test run. And I have tons of other ideas. 7 Kingdoms, which takes you back to before Aegon's conquest. The Free Cities, which adds Essos onto the map with all of its culture and people. That one will probably be pricey, $20 DLC, while the rest can be $5 to $10. Other periods in Westeros, like the Dance of Dragons, Blackfire Rebellions, or more cultures and factions like Slaver's Bay, the Dothraki, and ooh, I would love the Summer Islands. I could go on, but I should probably end it here. What do you think? Like my game idea? Have some issues with it? Whatever your thoughts, I would love to hear them in the comments down below. And if you like games as much as me, make sure to click on the Discord link. If you see me playing a game you have, then maybe we can hop in and kick each other's asses. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you liked the video. But with all that said, be safe, and I hope you all have a wonderful night.